Okay, another reading out of Origins of the Gods by Andrew Collins and Gregory L. Little. We are now in one, part one, section 4, The Little People. It was in 1988 that Lou White Eagle, an arrow priest of the Cheyenne and grandson of the famed Cheyenne high priest Edward Red Hat, came to Memphis and stayed with my wife and me for 30 days. I wonder what was in 40 days. Wonder what would have happened if they stuck it out for 4 days. That would have been interesting. It transpired during a protest carried out by several tribal organizations against a proposed archaeological dig in downtown Memphis at a mound site many believe was where Hernando de Soto first viewed the Mississippi River in 1541. White Eagle and his family accepted our invitation to stay at our home. During those 30 days, we would have the opportunity to hold some of the sacred arrows as well as engage in some deep conversations about shamanism and spiritual beliefs. It is a detailed story that I related in People of the Web and in many interviews since then. At that time, I was working for the county government as a drug treatment program director in the local prison and was also engaged in a small private practice with a psychologist and psychiatrist. On a Sunday, I took White Eagle to my private practice office, where I had to complete some insurance paperwork. I invited him to try out an experimental device we had in the office, which was then known as the Gram potentializer. So the Gram potentializer. It was essentially a comfortable bed, about the size of a large couch, that produced a field of electromagnetic energy that engulfed the individual reclining on it. The bubble of electromagnetic energy mimics the Earth's ambient field. The fundamental Schumann resonance. The device also does a gentle cyclical rotational up and down movement every 7 seconds that is tuned to the average cycle of the ocean waves. All of us who used the device had strange experiences, but White Eagle's one experience with it was the most vivid of any of us reported. He declined subsequent invitations to use it because it produced what he interpreted as a powerful trickster experience. When White Eagle reclined on the device, I turned it on and excused myself and went to another office. About 15 minutes later, he came into my office, visibly shaken. Quote, "Little blue people," end quote, he said. "What?" I replied. He said, "Little blue people are in the room." He explained that after lying on the bed for a few minutes, he became aware of some sort of presence observing him. He opened his eyes and looked around the room, which had 3 large windows to the outside. He said that there were several small blue beings peering into the room. He added that suddenly he couldn't move. He said that the creatures then passed through the windows and walls, and they gathered around his body. They were physical beings about 3 feet tall and covered with some sort of blue, skin-tight fabric. They began poking at his body, which caused him major distress that appeared to break the spell of paralysis. He immediately sat up, got off the device, and came to my office. He wouldn't go back into the room after that, but I did, of course, and I saw nothing out of the ordinary, but the machine was still moving. Later that day, I showed him some pictures of the traditional grays associated with UFO abductions. White Eagle related that they were similar looking, but not exactly the same. He wouldn't say much else about them at the time. He eventually said that they were the little people of Native American trickster lore and were physically real when they appeared to him. However, it was necessary to add that not all trickster or other encounters with the little people have been reported as negative. While interactions with the little people as tricksters were fraught with danger, a great knowledge and power could be derived from the interactions with them if they were treated with care and respect. White Eagle sadly died in 2018. He was a Vietnam veteran. Shawnee Tis, I guess this would be Sistis. I'm not saying it. I don't know if I'm saying it right. It's Tistististas. Tistis Arrow Priest. A bowstring headsman man, as well respected in the indigenous community. I learned a great deal about the ceremonial rituals involved with the Sistes ceremony from White Eagle and about their beliefs about humans' purpose and role in the world. We'll explore those in the next chapter. It was also the first time that I discovered that one of their most sacred beliefs was that the human soul went to the stars after death. But I also learned a lot about what I see as archaeological communities' disrespect for native culture during those 30 years. 30 days, not 30 years. Over that time period, I became privy to the archaeologists' discussions while the controversy took place. I had attempted to resolve the situation between the archaeologists and Native American groups and became a mediator who talked privately with each group over a few days. Hearing what I interpreted as very demeaning attitudes held by both the students and the professors towards the Native Americans was very disheartening and left an indelible stain on me that remains to this day. I came to understand that Native Americans were seen by many as a hindrance to real, in quotes, archaeology, and that their beliefs were seen as stupid, superstitious, and unscientific. Some of that has changed a bit since then, but not really all that much. I think those demeaning attitudes are just better concealed today. I add that the dig into the mound was canceled 30 days later when the Memphis City Council passed a resolution banning any excavations there. That was a battle the Native Americans won. The story of the Crow Chief, Red Plume, and the Little People. Most books date the time of one of the most incredible and well-documented spiritual experiences ever reported by Native Americans to have taken place in the 1780s. But it was probably around 1762 or 1763 when a famous young Native American first ascended Medicine Mountain to the Bighorn Medicine Wheel. The young man, then about the age of 12, was on his first vision quest. He was called Fool Boy because of his brash boasting about his destiny as a great warrior and leader. Like all the Crow tribal youth of his village, at the age of 12, he ascended the mountain to the site of the wheel, as it was then known. No one was sure who built the wheel or when, but it was one of the most holy places. The wheel is a rock-formed circular formation with numerous lines of stone coming from its center like spokes. There is a large, and I don't know, crane, C-A-I-R-N. It's not crane. CERN? I'm going to find out how to pronounce that because I don't know how to pronounce that. Anyways, I am who I am. Don't like it? Go somewhere else. That's what I say. No, I'm not saying that. I don't like it either. But have patience with me, please. Have patience. Pronunciation.
Karen.
Karen. Karen. Pronounced like, don't be a Karen. Karen, okay. C-A-I-R-N. So there's a large cairn, or a large rock pile with a depressed center. A large rock pile with a depressed center. Have you ever seen one of those things that's called a cairn? And I wonder why they call it a cairn. The site is described in more detail in the next chapter. He hiked about 10,000 feet up the mountain, well above the timberline, to a flat granite plain where astonishing views were seen to the distant horizon. The adolescent vision quest was a very personal journey into adulthood, a venture that to find personal medicine or power, to affiliate with a spirit animal, and to find one's destiny. In brief, it was a formal process of discovering one's identity. It required the person to be alone for an extended period and make it through what psychologists might call a dark night of the soul. Which is interesting because we talked about that a little bit last night with Scott Patterson. At least I did. From Ontario Sasquatch. It demonstrated the ability to sustain oneself in real darkness, to connect with the primal forces of nature, to endure weakness and sorrow, and to do so alone. It was a final preparation step to adulthood. The young man made offerings to the 4 sacred directions and then walked to the rock cairn located in the center of the wheel. After smoothing the surface, he placed a buffalo robe on the ground and reclined. For 4 days and 3 nights he endured great suffering. He had only a buffalo robe, no food nor water, and nothing else to give him comfort. As the 3rd and final night began unfolding, he was in despair because of all the experience was pain and torment. All he had experienced was pain and torment, but he continued to pray and sing as long as night unfolded. He became aware of the sounds of something approaching him. Looking up, he could see the shapes of three small people coming towards him. Beings who looked as small as children. They were three men and a woman. Instantly he realized they were the little people. The more powerful spiritual beings, the most powerful spiritual beings encountered by only a very few privileged people. He knew the little people could be helpful guides and cause disaster. After a few words were spoken, the four little people moved close to the central cairn and disappeared. So they just disappeared, huh? By the way, the description that he's talking about on this plane it looks kind of like an orb. If you think about it. Just if you think about it. Or a portal. If you think about it. I'm just saying. Anyways, I'm losing my kind of frog in my throat as usual. Good gosh. So they were three men and a woman. Instantly he realized that they were the little people, the most powerful spiritual beings encountered by only a very few privileged people. He knew the little people could be helpful guides or cause disaster. After a few words were spoken, the four little people moved close to the central cairn, and disappeared. The young man stood up, shaking from exhaustion. A dark hole opened beneath him, and he suddenly found himself in a shaft of a cave leading to a tunnel, a complex. Almost nothing is known about what transpired in the cave, but the young seeker supposedly remained there for 3 more days and nights. During this time, he went through a series of tests and was instructed in both warfare and leadership. Here is what the historical records tell us about the encounter's outcome. In the end, he saw a vision of a soaring eagle. He was handed a tail of feather from a red eagle. It was to become his symbol and his spirit power. He was told to always wear the head feather and never cut his hair again. His new name, his adult leadership name, was to be Red Plume. As the known story goes, nearly 4 years later, he formed a small raiding party of young warriors and ventured off to the southwest, to the lands of the Lakota, then the sworn enemy of his Crow tribe. There they attacked a village and took many horses and scalps. Soon they repeated the same carnage on another Lakota village and returned to the Crow lands, where they were hailed as great warriors. He then became known as Red Plume. He supposedly never cut his hair again. After descending the mountain as a youth, whites came to know him as Long Hair when his hair reached 10 feet in length. He made many more successful raids and eventually became a highly respected chief of the Crow. In 1820, around the age of 70, he survived a miraculous battle, and he later was a signer of the 1825 Friendship Treaty. He died at the age of 86 and allegedly had hair some 25 feet in length. That's a lot of hair, man. A piece of his hair is kept in the Chief Plenty Coops State Park at Pryor, Montana. On his deathbed, he related that his spirit would reside at this wheel, and visitors could commune with him there. There are many Native American legends from virtually all tribes about the little people. In 1993, the 1993 book Native Healer flatly states that the little people, also known as the Woogie, I'm not saying that right. Let's try to make this one work too, man. Woogie? Woggy? Woggy. Woggy. They're not going to let me know. I'm not going to look forever for it, okay? Woggy. That's Wogey. Woggy. Also known as the Woggy, or Woggy, are exactly what modern people call outer space beings. I like ultra-terrestrial better than extraterrestrial. The Choctaw, Cherokee, and Chickasaw all had myths that the little people would abduct people at night. However, appearances of the little people and other spirits were often associated with unusual lights in the sky. For example, E.S. Curtis related the story of a vision quest where the seeker encountered a red-eyed, winged creature that appeared after a star came to the ground, and flashes of light on the ground constantly appeared. From other sources, we are told that Ojibwe shamans could conjure spirits that would cause small lights to fly around inside tents. Orbs, Ojibwe. I have a connection with the Ojibwe. Alright, anyways. A modern description of the process involved with the appearance of the lights related to ritualistic chanting creates a psychic resonance needed to activate the archetypical energies. And revealed that the chant was open the sky from the center, in quotes. Open the sky from the center, open the sky from the center, open the sky from the center. Can we believe such stories, or are they all hallucinations or utter fabrications? I am certain that what Lou Whitecloud, that's my grandpa's name, they call me Louis, related about the little blue people was sincere. I also note that the story of Red Plume is accepted as genuine. Native American mythology is generally ignored or derided by skeptics, and it is certain that some of their tales are embellished or simply not true. But should we just reject them all? The reality is that some incredible Native American practices and events have been studied scientifically, and that the scientists involved are convinced there is something else, some other force that intrudes. The incredible Massaum ceremony of the Shawnee is one very important example. So, Massaum ceremony, and I don't know if I'm even saying that right. How do you know if you're saying half these words right? I can't even say Greek words right, Latin words right. Now I got to try to figure out how to say this right. Hell, I can't even speak English. Let's be honest. Well, so we got a little bit of time here. See what happens. Son of a freaking puppy dick. Dingle. Puppy dingle. I'm not going to try to say it. I'll figure it out. It's M-A Massaum. Sum. Cause. Caw. Som. Massaum. It's the Massaum. The Massaum ceremony. Massaum ceremony. That's probably what it is. Anyways. The next one is the Shawnee. And I got to figure out how to pronounce these words before I get to this one. Sistus Massaum ceremony. Maybe I won't be able to figure it. Anyways, interesting to say the least. In my book, more connections, connecting the dots. A lot of time you got to do it on your own and not following just other people's leads. Okay, we're now part 5, the Shawnee Sistus Massaum ceremony. The Sistus. Lou White Eagle's grandfather, Edward Red Hat, 1898 to 1982, he lived a long time, was the keeper of the arrow of the Southern Shawnee tribe until his death. Red Hat was the key source of information for Carol Schlester's classic 1985 book, The Wolves of Heaven, which to this day remains the most detailed description and explanation of the most sacred ceremony of the Plain tribes. Schlesinger, I don't know how to pronounce that damn name. Schlesinger began working with Red Hat in 1971. The Massaum ceremony was more than a set of rituals. It was based on a deep belief system with the prescribed set of rites that invoked the physical appearance of spiritual entities. The Massaum ceremony is derived from the Sistus culture belief system, with Sistus referring to the Cheyenne people who engaged in that tradition. The name Cheyenne is actually the Sioux term for people of an alien speech. Cheyenne speak an Algonquin dialect related to the language of the Ojibwe, and many modern tribes in Canada and the Northwest United States share the same genetic lineage and customs. It is generally believed that all the Algonquin groups, even their distant cousins, the Navajos, came to the Americas from Siberia long ago via the Beringia land bridge that formed at the end of the last ice age, if you believe any of that nonsense. if it came from the West, you know it's a damn lie. They call it the Western European. Ideas from Siberian shamans. Schlesinger traced the earliest conducting of Massaum ceremony in North Africa in circa 500 BCE, when large numbers of tribe immigrated from the east to the plains region centering in the Black Hills area. He repeatedly asserted that the Massaum had its ultimate origin from the northern Siberian shamans who engaged in similar practices as long as 12,000 BC, if you believe that. To confirm this, Schlesinger evaluated 134 different practices and elements of the Massaum ceremony, and then compared them to a similar ceremony in the northern Siberian shamanistic societies. He found that 86% of the practices were a direct match and concluded that they were essentially the same set of rituals with the same underlying beliefs. Wherever the origin of the Cheyenne is, the ceremony of the Massaum and the belief attached to it stem far back into time. In addition to the knowledge Schlesier, I don't know how to pronounce the name, gathered from Edward Red Hat, he provided a detailed background on what was recorded during the few times the Massaum was conducted and witnessed by earlier ethnographers. The ceremony dissipated over time and gradually evolved into different practices because of warfare, epidemics, and governmental restraints on Native American religious practices. Now, Schlesier related the practices have perished, but there are still a few remnants of the ceremony, both the well-known sun dance and even the sacred arrow practices are far more recent spiritual ceremonies that developed out of the beliefs underlying the Massaum. We'll not go into detail on the sun dance and the sacred arrows here, but we want to focus on the beliefs and the rituals involved with the Massaum ceremony, secret societies, and their purpose of the Massaum. Secret societies are typically described as exclusive, voluntary organizations that claim access to hidden bodies of knowledge and special skills. Archaeologists are coming to recognize that these societies were far more important in the ancient world than they previously realized and were used as a mechanism for social control, like it is today, actually. That's right. The creation of mound complexes and earthworks and sites such as Stonehenge were likely the result of ritual practices by secret societies, and the evidence of their existence goes back at least 40,000 years ago. Schlesier related that there were several secret societies involved in the Massaum ritual, and that all of them had a special language that was privy only to the members initiated into the particular group. Most of the membership lines of the societies were hereditary. Although there were occasional exceptions, there were two major divisions among the secret societies. There were the shamans and another grouping of secret societies that were tasked with, quote, working for the sacred, end quote. A specific ritualistic roles dictated by the shamans and the other elites. One major purpose of the Massaums was to symbolically reenact the initial moment of creation. According to the Sisyphus cosmology, all that existed before creation was a singularity of energy, with the word energy meaning spirit. Schlesier used the term singularity 3 times in his book for what he was told existed before creation. When the singularity split, it created the universe into 3 parts. The Massaum ceremony was a formal process to connect with the 3 created worlds, the upper world, the lower world, and the earth, the middle world. The Muslims allowed communion with the spiritual powers of all three worlds and maintained a balance and harmony among the powers of all three. It was a way to allow spiritual powers to interact with humans so that balance and harmony could be maintained. The idea of communing with the powers of the spiritual world was taken literally by the tribes, and by Roman Catholics for that matter. That means that the spiritual powers could manifest visibly and physically to the tribal members. This was accomplished through a long set of intricate rituals performed by members of the secret societies who acted in specific roles after going through a spiritual cleansing. The playing of roles activated the spiritual forces of all three worlds and allowed them to manifest under what could be described as controlled circumstances. The ceremony was complicated and took a lot of time, but it allowed the forces of the spiritual powers of the three worlds to gather together and harmonize their activities and purposes. It was a mandatory obligation to conduct the ceremony, or harmony of the universe would suffer and the tribe would experience calamity. The fate of the tribe was held in the balance, and the successful performance of the Massaum ceremony ensured the tribal fate as a good one. Underlying beliefs. The Tissacis tradition recognized that humans gain most of their knowledge from interacting with the earth spirits that are routinely encountered during day-to-day life. Earth spirits are linked to our physical world, and they are the forces that the vast majority of the populace form connections with in the guise of spiritual animals, birds, certain plants, land forms, weather phenomena, water and waterways. However, the most powerful of the earth spirits was the Mayum. Maiyun. Mayum. Spirit entities that could be encountered in caves or when the seeker was grounded in deep earth. For example, one of the practices of the Massaum ceremony involved the construction of a circular ceremonial structure, which was prepared by removing all of the sod from the ground so that the participants could be directly touching the deep earth with their bare feet. Shamans and medicine people would perform hypnotic-like rituals within this sacred, grounded space, leading to a variety of experiences. Saussure wrote, quote, phenomena defined by modern parapsychology as out-of-body experiences and psychokinesis were integral parts of these seances. Another related component of the Massaum ceremony was to orient the circular site towards Bear Butte, like the animal bear, Bear Butte, located in western southern Dakota, which was the most sacred place where the Mayum could be encountered. Legends relate to it was at Bear Butte. I can't say this. I can't read this. Legends relate that it was at Bear Butte where the prophet Sweet Medicine was famously given knowledge by the Mayum. There is archaeological evidence that the site had been used for 10,000 years. The dating is always questionable, people. It's always questionable. I was involved in the scientific field, and I saw it being fudged firsthand. So, two incredible cave systems are located about 85 miles south of Bear Butte. Both are considered to be places where the Massaum could be encountered. One is known as Jewel Cave. As of today, the site has over 208 miles of mapped and surveyed passages and is the third largest known cave system in the world. The other cave system is Wind Cave. This cave was known to whites was unknown to whites until 1880, when three men stumbled on it, verifying several native legends of rushing air from a hole. Today it is a national park and described by the Park Service as, quote, one of the largest and most complex caves in the world, end of quote. The circular ceremonial space and temporary village area had a single opening towards Bear Butte. That opening both invited and allowed the Massaum from Bear Butte to enter and manifest within the circular space. Before we move on, it is important to understand that in Native American beliefs, specific types of landforms held different types of spiritual power and attracted spiritual entities. The shape, material, and type of the landform, both natural and man-made, were all important. Caves which went into the deep earth were believed to be a way to commune with both the Massaum and other spiritual forces of the underworld. Mountaintops were seen as a way to access spiritual forces of the upper world. All of the myriad of ceremonies and rituals of the Massaum had restricted levels of participation based on the individual's membership in various societies. The masses participated in the reenactment of certain events, such as a sacred hunt, where members of one secret society dressed as an animal, but only some elite members engaged in the deeper rituals invoking and ultimately evoking some of the most sacred and powerful forces in the universe. The reenactment of the creation of the universe from a singularity, for example, was witnessed by only a select few. It is significant that the physical appearance of certain spiritual powers during the ceremony is It is significant that the physical appearance of certain spiritual powers during the ceremony is often described. The Massaum started and ended with signals from the sky. The Massaum ceremony was held in the middle of summer. As mentioned previously, it served as a renewal of a covenant between the creator called Mahio, Maheo, and the created humans to ensure harmony. A signal from the sky made by Mahio served to notify the shamans of the timing to start the ceremony. From Cheyenne accounts, the signal to begin the Massaum ceremony was received at the Bighorn Medicine Wheel, a site mentioned in Chapter 4. In the story of Red Plume, the Medicine Wheel is an 80-foot rock. The Medicine Wheel is an 80-foot diameter circular formation made from carefully arranged rocks. The formation lies above the timberline and the Bighorn Mountains of Wyoming and allows a stunning view of the horizon on all sides. A total of 28 rocks formed 28 rock-formed spokes radiated from the center of the formation, creating a wheel-like appearance. There are several cairns located in the wheel, including a large one in the center. In 1974, astronomer John Eddy calculated that the wheel had alignments to the summer solstice, sunrise and sunset, and the midsummer rising of the star Aldebaran regal stars, plural, Aldebaran, Regal, and Sirius. A year later, he found similar alignments to some 20 other medicine wheels in the United States and Canada. Eddy calculated that the formation's astronomical alignments were accurate from about 200 to 700 years ago. In essence, if you lie down in a cairn, you can look down a spoke of a wheel and see the sun. The Massaum's preparations, combined with the ceremony, lasted 56 days. Preparations for the ceremony were started when shamans watching from the medicine wheel late at night observed the red star, Aldebaran. Or Aldebaran. To rise on the northeast horizon just before the sunrise on June 22 or the 22nd. During the next 4 weeks, the tribes were gathered together and tasked with making a new temporary living space, creating a circular ceremonial space, and making other preparations. The preparations ended exactly 28 days later when the blue star Regal was seen to rise on the eastern horizon just before sunset. That was the signal for the sacred hunt to begin, along with a sequence of other complex rituals. Schlesinger provided many details of the rituals involved in the long and complex ceremony, and we'll not go into them here. The ceremony ended 28 days later when the white star Sirius rose out of the southeastern horizon just before sunrise. It was a signal that the covenant between the Creator, Mahio, and the people was renewed. Both Schlesinger and Lou White Eagle were quite clear about one aspect of the ritual. Spiritual forces and entities made physical appearances at certain times during the rituals. These forces are activated by the ceremonies and the rituals, and for their own reasons, the spiritual entities will occasionally appear as physical forms to humans in many different guises. At least that is what we are told. I vividly recall Lou White Eagle being hesitant to speak of the things, saying, quote, "This is sacred knowledge," end quote. Before he would discuss such things, he went outside and gathered dirt. He then purified himself by tossing dirt over himself and occasionally on me. I'm pretty sure I needed purifying. There are so many similar tales about various rituals from the oral histories of Native American tribes found all over both North and South Africa that it seems foolish to just dismiss them all. Are modern UFO abductions accounts any more or less valid than what native tribes relate? Are modern paranormal events more believable because they are modern? The truth is there are hundreds of accounts from native sources telling about paranormal encounters, and they were far from savages living in superstition. The main fact that has been kept in mind is that they lived in the natural world. They clearly evaluated everything in their natural world. Their medicine men and women were far from charlatans. Zuni and mound builders ethnobiology. If you read ethnography books from the 1700s to the mid 1900s, you'll generally see the medical practices and shamanistic beliefs of the Native Americans ridiculed and called superstitious. And an 1896 book written by a professor of American archaeology at the University of Pennsylvania related, quote, nature to the heathen is no harmonious whole swayed by eternal principles, but a chaos of causeless effects, the meaningless play of the capricious ghosts. All events to him are miraculous, end quote. Native Americans are referred to as, quote, savage race, at least of the observer, not from those who were observed. To some extent, it comes from the haughtiness of those who see themselves as scientists who believe that they hold truth. But the attitude describing native knowledge and beliefs as heathen and savage is simply wrong. In fact, we're more like that than they are. Look how many people our Western European ancestors have slaughtered in the name of God for one or country, or just really for just profiteering, right? Who is the savage? I argue we are. We've always been. I hate to see the payback. These ancient people prescribed science in their own way. Just one example of what can really be seen as a Native American scientific practice is their effective use of plants available to them for medical purposes. The first European visitors who observed Native American medical practitioners usually described them as being primitive and employing trickery. They were described as conjurers with superficial knowledge. It is clear that the historic period European witnesses confused medical practice with shamanistic and spiritual practices. The deepest knowledge of the medicine people was a carefully guarded secret, something the early Europeans didn't realize. To put this into a cultural perspective, remember for a moment that bloodletting was a common practice in Western medicine until the early 1900s. The 1923 edition of the Text of Principles and Practices of Medicine still recommended bloodletting for many disorders, although the procedure had been discredited and had all but ceased by then. And in brief, what purports itself to be science isn't necessarily factual and can essentially be superstition, savagery, and quackery itself. In 1879, the Smithsonian Institute's Bureau of American Ethnology sent James Stevenson and his wife Matilda to the Zuni tribe in New Mexico to investigate the Zuni knowledge of plants. In their report, the researchers noted, while it was generally observed by early travelers among the Indians that they employed plants for medical purposes, it was long believed, even by scientific students, that the practices of the Indian doctors were purely shamanistic. However, Stevens quickly found that there were many effective and legitimate medical substances used by the Zuni, including narcotics. After being accepted into the inner circle of the Zuni shamanistic societies, they began an evaluation of the plant substances used by the shamans and medicine people. They eventually discovered 63 different plant substances that surprisingly were effectively used for a host of medical conditions. The Stevensons sent samples of each plant to the Smithsonian for chemical analysis. Some of these substances were eventually adapted into medicine used in Western medicine, but you won't see that mentioned very often in the mainstream literature. The Stevensons concluded that over the millennia, trials and errors had led to the Zuni's knowledge of the various plants, but the Zuni related the knowledge was given to their medicine people from the realm of the spirits. The work of the Stevensons was all but forgotten and largely ignored, and once again Americans' mainstream archaeological community relegated more of the Native American medical practices to the realm of superstition and quackery. But in 1978 and 1979, two pharmacologists worked with 27 different Zuni medicine men and elders and managed to collect and evaluate 138 plant substances used by their healers. The vast majority of the plants were successfully used for a wide range of medical purposes. They discovered there were 31 additional medical plants that the Stevensons were not informed of back in the 1800s, implying that many of their most effective remedies were kept secret from them. The mound-building cultures of the eastern half of North America also developed extensive knowledge of plants. According to the academic archaeologists, these ancient cultures used 275 species of plants for medicine, 130 species for food, 31 species for magical purposes, 27 species for smoking, 25 species for dyes, 18 species for beverages and as flavoring, and 52 species for various other purposes. While it should be clear that there was a society of true medicine people within ancient Native American culture, the overriding belief of the culture was that a spiritual reality existed. Humans and everything in the physical world, plants, animals, and physical objects, and the powers and entities in the upper and lower world were all manifestations of this spiritual reality. People trying to understand what Native Americans really believed are biased by their own conceptions of shamans, medicine people, and spirituality. That is a good place to stop. It's page 40. Might take me a while to read this book, but this one book is worth reading and sharing with people. If it's nothing more than just to pass the time in my book.
You're going to try, go all the way. Otherwise, don't even start. If you're going to try, go all the way. This could mean losing girlfriends, wives, relatives, jobs, and maybe your mind.
Running